Hi folks, PJ here. Just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Prusa i3 Mark II and the assembly that I just did the other day, and some of the little tips and hints that I have for you. There's a couple of videos out there right now currently that kind of show a time lapse or the whole build process. I'm not going to do that over again. There's some great ones out there that you can find. But I did have a couple things that I learned in the process that I just wanted to go over and help hopefully save some frustration out there. So let's get started. So first thing is the build process does take a while, and you really need to be prepared for that. You'll see it in some of the videos where people are showing the build, how many hours it took. I started about 10 in the morning, had a lunch in the middle of the day, etc. Probably finished up right around 5 o'clock. I have it here in my office, so I was ready to go at 5. My first little hint is, take your time and take breaks. I got to the point in the afternoon where it was about 4 o'clock, and I was on the last couple steps, and boy did I want to get that thing printing before I left for the day. My eyes are having a hard time focusing. I'm having a hard time seeing the instructions at that point. My brain was just fried. As it came to the last few minutes, I finally said, I'll finish it in the morning. Left, went home, got a good night's sleep, came back in the morning, and in about 45 minutes, had popped everything back together. So it was ready to go. So just do take your time, split it up if you can. It did help. So that's my tip number one for you, is just enjoy the build. That's why you got it, and but take your time. Tip number two is regarding some of the cabling at the end. I found that the instructions were great until probably the last couple steps, which involved a lot of the electronics. The cabling goes into a box that you help put together there on the back, and one of the cables that came from the Z-axis, I wasn't quite sure where that belonged. I'm not sure if I missed it in the instructions. It's probably in there, but there is a little tiny hole in the side. I'll show you that in a second. There's a little tiny hole in the side of the box that's perfect for that cable to go through. I'll show you. I ended up putting it through the back. I'll probably end up moving it, but those cables need to move freely, so you need to make sure that they're kind of in the right places. The other thing that was a little confusing in the build, you get a couple pieces of 3mm filament that goes into the wiring harnesses as you're connecting them up, and they're there to stiffen the wiring harnesses so the wires don't get tangled up in the movements or in your build. Pay attention to the orientation of those filament wires. So one of the mistakes I made, and I'll have to fix it at a later date, is I have the filament that's coming out of the extruder block essentially is bending down instead of bending up. And I'm not sure the instructions ever said anything about making sure it was bending up in the right way. So when my extruder is on the bed, my cabling bundle actually comes out and bends down a little bit, touches the back of the bed. Hasn't been an issue yet, but when you see it, it does kind of make you feel a little squeamish, as though if the build was big enough that there was something on the back of that bed there, the cabling harness would be hitting it. So make sure, if you can, when you're putting in that piece of filament, that its curvature is assisting in keeping that harness off the bed for you. Another little quick tip for you. This is all brand new to me. I'm a first-time 3D'er, if that's even a term. And one of the things that I had a little issue with as I was reading the manual is just the whole XYZ axis orientation. Which one is what? And again, as the day goes on and I'm getting tired, my eyes are getting tired, the instructions say, okay, now take the cable from the Z motor and I had to, which one's the Z motor? And I'd sit there and think about, okay, X, Y, Z, Z is the up and down. All right, Z motor. So a little tidbit, just write them down on a piece of paper and keep them on your build platform somewhere, so that you can reference it, especially if you're new. I know some of you out there have that stuff locked in your head. It's not locked into mine, so that's just a little tidbit for you, help you get through the day. It has to do with some of the calibration at the end. So I took a lot of precautions to try to make sure I was building this correctly, because I heard some nightmares about calibration, and I really didn't want to have them. And I won't say I had nightmares, but I had some frustrations at the end, and I learned a couple things, so I wanted to kind of share that with you. There's two main calibrations that you're going to do with the new firmware. Once you're done, the first calibration is the XYZ calibration. It's going to run it on its own. It's just going to go down, hit the bed, go through all the different calibration points, fine tune them, and then hopefully at the end you're going to get a message that says everything is great. Chances are you're not going to get that message the first time. It might just say that, you know, it's skewed a little bit, but it'll be corrected in the software, which means essentially you're fine. Or you might get something where it says, you know, unable to read the front calibration points. I got that once. So that's a little frustrating when you first get it, because you're not quite sure what could be wrong. It all looks great when you're done building it, especially if you take your time. So this is what I found was wrong with mine, and I hope, you know, maybe this would help a couple people. Underneath the bed, when you're putting the bed assembly together, underneath the heat bed here, it's attached with 6 screws, 1 in each corner and 2 in the middle. And the screws are somewhat shallow, and they screw into standoffs on the bottom of the bed. You'll see them when you turn the bed over. You'll see the standoffs there. So there is a little bit of a gap underneath the bed there. And I had an issue where the zip ties that are underneath the bed there, the nubs of the zip ties interfered with how the bed screwed down. And I don't think it was something that I would have ever noticed, except that when I took it off, trying to figure out why it wasn't quite calibrating right, I realized that the bed, although the bed was tight, it was hitting those zip tie nubs, and it was just disorienting the bed a little bit. So make sure when you're doing your build, you'll see it in the instructions, but make sure you are putting those zip tie nubs towards the center of the bed, and they'll go pretty flat that way, and that saved a lot of trouble, or a lot of issues right there. So that's a recommendation that I didn't quite see anywhere, and that once I did that, believe it or not, it calibrated great. That seemed to be one of my bigger calibration issues right there. So the next calibration that you do is nozzle height. So once you finish the XYZ calibration, the screen will come up and say, congratulations, it's calibrated. However, nozzle height has not been calibrated. On the SD card, there is a calibration G code that you'll use. It will print a line, and you're supposed to go in and fine tune the calibration height of the nozzle. So sounds easy. Two issues I had. First of all, I felt like the calibration print was going very fast, and I was having a hard time, you know, making any adjustments before it would be done. I'd have to clean off the bed and do it again and try to adjust it and then clean off the bed. So I probably did it like 4 or 5 times. Again, I'm new at this, so I didn't realize it, but on the screen you'll notice that there's a 100% is a number on here. That's your print speed, and you can just turn your wheel and spin that down, and you know, go down to 80 or 60%, and it slows down the print speed. Once I did that and slowed it down so I could actually see what was going on and pay attention, it was a lot easier to calibrate that way. And to be honest, I actually used it on a couple prints. I was doing the tree frog print, and was running into an issue in just the first few layers where it was getting caught up in the nozzle and pulling up. And all I did is go down and slow down that print to about 60% for the first few layers, and then let it speed back up, and it printed fine. So you know, print speed seems to be my new best friend. The other issue I had with that calibration is the first time I did it on the nozzle calibration is I had to make an adjustment of almost a full millimeter to get any kind of effect on the filament. So I thought that was fine, and then I was kind of reading around, and it sounds like, you know, I think the Prusa site said somewhere between 0.3 and 0.5 millimeters is about the average as to what you should need to adjust it, and I'm all the way up at a full millimeter. So it took me a little bit to look through and try to figure out why is that, and what would cause mine to be off. You know, is the bed not the right height? Is what could be wrong? And and I realized it was probably the probe. So I went in and made a slight adjustment to my probe. So I raised my probe a little bit so that when it's doing the Z calibration, the height calibration, that nozzle is actually going to be a little bit closer to the bed. So you raise the probe, that allows the nozzle to be a little lower, and lo and behold, I'm at like 200 or 0.28 millimeters for my calibration now, and it's printing great now. So if you run into that where your nozzle adjustment seems to be out of whack, it's probably your probe height, and it's just a minor tweak. You don't have to do a big change to that probe. But the manual talks a little bit about the probe height and how to adjust it. It's not the most detailed, but essentially you want your probe, if this is your nozzle, you want your probe to be just above your nozzle height, so that it's not going to hit any of your prints as it's moving around, but also so that it can adjust that nozzle automatically as it's doing the Z-axis calibration. So I hope these tips help you. Somebody out there, I know it's short and sweet, but hopefully as you're waiting for your Prusa to get shipped to you as I did mine, and you're watching all the YouTube videos on people building them and getting jealous, hopefully this little tip will help you out. Last little tidbit, one of the last things you need is a little bit of Loctite, blue Loctite, to help lock your probe in. I'm not sure that was mentioned until one of the very last steps of the manual, and of course I didn't have any blue Loctite handy at the end of my build. So I've been printing the last couple days, brought it in this morning. I'm going to go ahead and put it on there and get that thing. So if you're still waiting for your build to come in the mail, get some blue Loctite on the way. All right, have a great day, everybody.